Welcome to eBuilder University's on-demand video training. If you'd like to learn more about additional training opportunities, please contact your account manager. Now let's jump into the bidder's perspective.
Good day, everyone. This is Martin, eBuilder certified trainer, and today we're going to continue the bidding video or bidding module training series. In this next video, we are specifically going to give you the perspective of a bidder once they have been invited to a bid. You will notice on the screen that I have it split right down the middle. And the reason I do is because now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of explore what the perspective of a bidder is as it compares to the perspective of a bid manager is. So on the left-hand side of the screen, which is in this area right here, you will notice that it's very eBuilder-like. And this is the actual screen we saw, just slightly minimized when we concluded our previous video. And this is the person that we invited to our bid, our mechanical bid package. To the right of that, you're going to see the email that the person in question received as a result of being invited to the bid. So in essence, this email here is going to show what that person is going to receive on their end and how they will be able to access the bid. So for now, let's concentrate on the bidder side. So I'm going to expand this window and kind of expand the email here. That way you get to see what the bidder is going to see when they receive this email. A couple of things. First, the first attachment that you see at the top is, again, the bid instructions. This is something that we did in the first video for the bidding series where we actually set up the bid package, and one of the components of that was putting in some bid instructions. Now, as you can see, I made this a very generic attachment. So if I double click it, it literally says bid instructions at the top. Not really that exciting. However, it does get the job done. Now, when you go down here, you're going to get into some details that we also saw in the process of creating the bid. You see the project name that we're dealing with. You're going to see the bid package. You're going to see the nice formatted description that I did in my rich text box. And you're also going to see the bid due date and time. Okay. Now this is slightly changed because I had to alter the bid due date and time as a result of doing this training video. So no worries on this, but this will automatically change momentarily. And then you'll also see the bid time zone, very basic information. Also the bid contact. So remember, this is the person who you identified when creating the bid package as the main source of communication when you have a question as a bidder. Now, one of the most important components on this screen is this invitation key right here. This invitation key is an encrypted code that identifies three things simultaneously. It identifies you as an individual bidder. It will identify the project in eBuilder that it pertains to, and it will also identify the specific bid package. So, in essence, this invitation key cannot be used by anybody else. Even if it's someone within your organization that has also received a copy of this bid, they will also receive an individual invitation key. This is encrypted right down to the person. So what I typically do is I will highlight this invitation key, right-click on it, and copy it because I'm definitely going to use it when I go into eBuilder. Now, when I click into this link right here, eBuilder, or the invitation that I received, is going to lead me to an environment called the Bidders Portal, which is listed right here. Now let's talk about the Bidders Portal. The Bidders Portal is an environment provided by eBuilder to all potential bidders that do not have eBuilder licenses. This is typically where someone's going to come in and place their bid. Now the reason I keep talking about licenses is because it makes total sense, right? If you're a potential bidder, you're probably someone who has never logged into the account belonging to the owner or the eBuilder account holder ever. So how are you going to submit anything into eBuilder? As far as the bid's concerned, the answer is what I have highlighted at the top of the page. You're going to use the Bidders Portal. So please remember this word. Now on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to have a login area, and for first-time bidders, you're going to have the ability to register. Now, the registration can be managed in a way where an admin for your account can actually identify the things that are required for registration purposes. So, for instance, when someone clicks that button, you can dictate that they need to provide their first name, last name, company, address, email, all the typical stuff, and require them to provide those things. That way you have all the information that you as an individual organization require. Now, once this bidder has registered into the Bidders Portal, the great thing is that they'll never have to do that again. So if in the event they get multiple bids from your account, they can still use the same credentials that they used with the original bid. However, just like I mentioned before, they will get a different invitation key for each individual bid package they are invited to. On the right-hand side, you're going to have what's called a 5-minute video tutorial. This is actually a very good tool for us to show you because as an owner, you do not want to be caught up with trying to show your potential bidders how to use eBuilder. Some owners have never used our bid portal system before, and so what they're going to be able to do is watch this 5-minute video tutorial, and it's going to walk them through everything that they're going to have to do as a bidder. I'm obviously going to do it in this training video, but this video tutorial will be available with every invitation and every access to the bidders portal, so it's very helpful. And last but not least, you're also going to provide your bidders with our support information, our eBuilder technical support. So this is something very beneficial for every owner working with the bid module because we as a company will support your bidders. So what do we support them with? Well, obviously, we're not going to give them what they should charge for the work, right? That wouldn't be correct. But we can help them out with things like we can't log in. What's wrong with my password? I forgot my password. I don't understand what to do. So in essence, we're taking the burden off your shoulders as the person hosting the bid, and we are doing all the technical support for you in our support center. Now, once that bidder has established their credentials and they log into the bidders portal, and I'm going to log in with this generic name that I've come up with, they will be exposed to every single bid that they have been invited to. Okay, this is what the bidders portal looks like when they first log in. Now, obviously, this person is a test subject that I've created and has been invited to quite a few bids. However, I do want to draw your attention to this text box over here to the right called the invitation key. If you recall, this is the very thing that we got in the email. And now you're going to start understanding why I right-clicked on it in the email and copied it. Because when I right-click on it here and hit paste, I can automatically put the invitation key here and not have to go back and forth between the email and do one digit at a time. So once I click go to the right, it's going to open up the bid package. Now, a couple of things that we need to look at. Again, let me bring you back to center, good yoga term that I use all the time for training. We are looking now at the bid package from the perspective of the bidder. This is what the bidder sees. And it's important for all of you to understand because if you understand what the bidder sees, you will better set up your packages and you'll understand the effects of putting certain details into your bid package when you're setting it up. The first thing I want to point out is this up here called the bidding status. It will literally by the minute tell the bidder how long they have to present their bid. Okay? This is very helpful because at this point, everybody's going to be on the same page as far as all the bidders that have been invited, as far as when a bid has to be turned in and when numbers are due. So timing is very important when it comes to the procurement process in almost every client that we deal with. Now, in this header section here called bidding information, you're going to see a lot of the things that we went over when we first set up the bid package. You're going to see things like pre-bid meeting information. You're going to see bid start and date time, bid due date and time, the time zone that we're taking under consideration, another opportunity to look at the instructions that we attach to the invitation. You're going to look at the name of the bid package, the location of the pre-bid meeting, if any, who the person you need to contact in the event you have any questions, whether you've submitted your bid, if the bidding status is pending, which in this case it is, and what the building square footage is. This is just basic information that every bidder is going to see when they receive the bid and have an opportunity. Now you'll notice as I went through that header, it took me exactly 1 minute to do it because this was at 50 minutes when we first started, and now it's at 49 minutes. So as we continue on, you will see this clock count down. Now, I did mention that when the bidder approaches the bidders portal for the first time, they will have the ability to access the 5-minute instructional video. One of the first things that it tells the bidder to do is to navigate to this button here called the accept and decline button. And when they click this button, what it's basically designed to do is it's designed to basically get a status from the bidder as to whether or not they will bid or will not bid on a project. Now, the reason this is important is because if, let's say, as an organization, you need a minimal amount of bids to qualify the work, you will have a real-time idea as to who is willing to participate in this bid package, which is super important to know ahead of time. In the old days, when all this was done manually, right, not electronically the way that we do it now, it was almost like you kind of had to wait to see if people submitted their bids. Now, this actually allows you to know ahead of time to make sure that if someone, whether or not they really want to to play the game with you. If they don't want to bid, then you'll know it ahead of time. So in this case, this person's very interested in this job. They are going to bid, and they can actually put in a message, as it's stated here, if desired, not required. But typically the message is written when people will not bid. Sometimes they'll write a message stating why they can't bid. Maybe they feel like, they can't participate in a bid like this, or they don't do this kind of work. It's a good way to get information back from the potential bidder. So once I've selected that I will bid, I'm going to click Save, and you'll notice right away that this bidding status right here went from pending to will bid. Now, in the meantime, I just want to make something clear, that all of this is being transmitted back to the bidding module within the system. The bidding manager in real time will always know exactly where that bidder will stand. So now I know I shifted kind of quickly into this page, but we are now back into the bidding module within the account. So these two things are really talking to each other in real time. So now I'm going to click this tab up here, and I'm going to go right back to the bidder's perspective. As you notice, that clock still keeps counting down, and we're going to proceed now to the bottom of the page. So, doesn't this look familiar? This is the bid scope. This is what we created in video number 3, I believe, where we actually established all the line items that were going to be used on this bid, right? All the things are here. Chiller, condensation lines, air handlers. We even have our alternate bid here listed, which allows us to actually identify whether or not we're going to provide this bid with solar panels in this case. And if I scroll to the right slightly, we are also going to see the how many chillers have you installed bid custom field. Now, the reason I wanted to show you this is because I just wanted to show you simply where it presents itself. Again, as I mentioned in video number 2, where we were setting up the bid package, this is an optional field. You do not necessarily need to use this, but it's there for the taking in the event that you want to get some more information from your bidders. Okay? Now, before we actually enter in our numbers, let's kind of approach this in a realistic way. So this is where I have to submit my bids, but what do I need before I can actually come up with that number? I mean, I know I only have a record of 46 minutes left to do this really complicated bid, but the first thing I'm probably going to want to explore is bid documents. Right? So the bid documents is basically the documents that I had attached in the bid documents folder that I selected when I created my bid package. And these are the two documents that I have available. Now notice what I can do. I can check these documents off. I can download them. I can even click on them here and see them in read-only format if I desire to do so. But ultimately, I would probably download them to make sure that I have them on my machine and I can look at them in my machine and understand what the drawings are about. And again, we are not limited to just PDFs. As you can see, we can do this with DWGs and JPEGs. Now, it is important to understand that if you use PDF, you're going to ensure that most of your bidders will be able to open it. If you have a DWG file and someone downloads it, they probably might have to have that type of software to actually see the file. So try to limit yourselves to PDFs because it's actually a pretty universal file type and most people can actually see it. To the right of that, we're going to have the Addenda tab, which I explained earlier that Addenda basically in the bidding world represents any kind of a change that takes place in a bid. And if someone did want to recommend a change to the bid during the bid period, this is where that change would be listed. I'm going to come back to this momentarily because I'm going to show you how this affects the bidder when a change is declared for the bid package. To the right of that, you're going to have what we call invited codes. This is just simply letting the bidder know that the CSI code that is being invited to this bid is 15,000, which falls under the 15th division of the 1995 CSI code list. Now, most people out there, I think, are using the 2012, which has 50 divisions. So again, it's irrelevant as long as you understand that what this represents. It's basically calling out the invited codes that are participating in this specific bid package. To the right of that, you're going to have one of my favorite tabs, which is called Questions and Responses. If there's anything bidders are going to have during the course of a bid, is they're going to have questions, right? They're probably going to be looking at your plans and they're going to say, well, I have to get some clarification around what's going on. Well, guess who the question is going to go to when they ask it? It's going to go to this person right here. This is the person who we declared at the very beginning of this endeavor to handle all the questions and to kind of play kind of air traffic control for the bid package during the bid period. So when someone submits a question, it will go directly to them. Let's try it out so you guys can actually see how it works. So when I click Submit Question, I'm going to get a screen that kind of looks like this. And I'm just going to put a very generic question here like, are you having a nice day? And, again, this is probably not the type of question you would get from a bidder, but, we're trying to keep the training positive here, right? I'm going to click Save. And now the question will present itself from the bidder's perspective. Now, I'm going to talk slow because I want to make sure you guys understand what I'm doing. I'm going to go back to this tab over here because this tab is eBuilder's account. In other words, this is what the bid contact is going to see, Martin in this case. So when Martin proceeds to this tab over here called Questions and Responses, that person's question is going to be listed right here. So again, instantaneously, you're seeing how two people are communicating with each other back and forth. This is a great way for this communication to be managed and logged, which is super important because from a records perspective, it's important to understand all the questions that were asked. So now when the bid manager sees the question and they hit this little reply arrow, they can respond to the questions. And they can also choose whether or not they're going to send the response to all the bidders, even though all the bidders didn't ask the same question, or just this individual bidder by unclicking this box. Now, this is a very helpful tool right here because if, let's say, the person was asking a technical question about the specs, then this is a way for the bid manager to just get that off the table, right? In other words, I'm going to answer this question for everyone in the event that they were thinking of asking me the same question. So it makes the process very efficient. So when I click Save, in essence, what the bid manager has done is they've responded to the question provided by the bidder. So when I go back to the bidder's side, the answer to the question should be here. I'm going to quickly refresh the page. Sometimes it takes a couple seconds, and if it's not there, we'll try it again, but there it is right there. Yes, I am. So again, we've created a clear line of communication between the bidder and the bid manager. The final tab that I'm going to review is the one called Custom Fields. Now, this one's a little tricky because this is the one that I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion in the video where we actually set up something called a bid custom field. I'm going to proceed back to the eBuilder environment and I'm going to show you strategically what I am talking about. So when I go back to the Bidding Details tab, which was the very first tab that we started reviewing when we created our bid package, I'm going to click Edit. The very area that I am referring to from the bidder's perspective right now is this one right here, where I mentioned that we are specifying what document we specifically need from the bidders, what piece of information we specifically need from the bidders upon submission, right? That's the key word here. And notice that on the left-hand side, I have everything I can choose from. And on the right-hand side, I have what's called the selected custom fields. So if we go right back to the bidder's perspective, you will notice that this is the exact document that the bid module is asking for upon submission of the bid. In fact, it's required, which is great because this means that a bidder will not be able to complete the bid unless they actually attach something here. So what I'll do is I'll just grab any random file that I have in my computer here and I will attach a bid. Let's just attach this little skyline here. This is a very nice skyline, and that will be what I submit. Now, obviously, you're not going to want to submit a random JPEG for this. If you're a bidder, you'll probably want to submit something legitimate or something that fits the description of this document right here in order to increase your chances. So now that I've kind of gone through this entire process, the one thing I do want to address before we actually submit our bid is the Addenda tab right here. Now, I did mention that the Addenda tab is a way for you to organize any kind of a change to the bid during the bid period and any kind of addendas that are added to the bid package during the bid period. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to proceed here to the bidding module. Once again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the bid manager, right? The person who's kind of managing the bid. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go specifically to the bid scope tab, because obviously addendas have to do with most likely an adjustment in scope. So here I have my Addenda tab on the eBuilder side, and when I click the Addenda tab, I'm going to add just a random addenda. I'm going to assign it a number, and I'm just going to call the description change. And then I'm going to say here in the text box, here is the change. Now, the fact that we can type this in and create the addendum isn't necessarily the great part of this. I think the most magnificent part of this is that once an addenda has been submitted for a bid, it's actually going to be required for someone to respond that they see the addenda. So as you notice, when I click addenda here, everything that I just wrote will now appear to the bidder. Now, again, let me state what I just said because it's very important. When the bidder intends on submitting their numbers for this bid, what's going to happen is that they will have to agree that they are doing it under the constraints of the addenda. So if there's 25 addendums on this bid package, they will have to acknowledge that they are submitting their number, taking those addendums into consideration, which is fantastic. That means that you'll never have the quote-unquote misunderstanding, and someone will never go back to you as a bidder to say, I didn't know that these addendas had to be taken into consideration. They actually have to acknowledge the fact that they've seen the addendums when submitting the bid, which I'm going to show you momentarily, in order for them to submit the bid. So there's no confusion. Now, if I go back to the bid submission tab, which is the first tab that we saw, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to plug in some numbers. Now notice it's not asking me for a lump sum amount. It's not asking me for total cost. It is actually asking me for unit cost. Now the reason it's doing that is because when we set up our bid scope, we strategically did it based on unit cost, which means that when I set up my bid scope, I am forcing the person to actually give me the rate per item that they are about to give me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put $80,000 here for the chiller. I'm going to put in, let's say, $30 a linear foot for the conduit. I'll put $500 for the air handlers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a unit cost of, let's say, $2,000 for the solar panels. Okay? Now, again, this is very important because in essence what I'm showing you here is that I am not giving you just this blended lump sum number. I am giving you a rate per unit, which is fantastic from a bidding perspective because as an owner, you get to break down that cost even more. Now, when I scroll down, I'm going to see some other things. Remember this? How long have you been in business? This was a question that we said was required. So this person as a bidder has to answer this question. Now, eBuilder offers the ability to answer this in whatever way you'd like, meaning it could be an alphanumeric answer. It could just be numeric. It doesn't really matter because it's offering it to you in what we call a string field. So if someone puts 10, or if someone adds year, or if someone says year, it doesn't really matter as long as they answer the question. And these questions will actually be displayed with the bid. Now, if I scroll down, look what we have here. I have the addenda, and what is it doing? It says check all boxes below to acknowledge addenda. Now, I want to make it clear that this will actually force you to acknowledge each addenda individually. That's why I numbered this one 100 purposefully so you can understand why. If I had 5 addendas and each of them were in increments of 100, I would have to acknowledge 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 before submitting the bid. So if I click this, it will allow me to submit the bid now. The next is qualifications, and this is kind of a generic field that eBuilder offers all bidders, and this is where they can actually state their qualifications. I call it the "this is how great I am" box, right? And this is where a person can kind of embellish on why they're qualified for the job and give a little bit of additional information over and above what's required of them. Finally, if I go down to the bottom of the page, we're going to go into the supporting documentation section. Now notice that the document that I attached in the previous field, which was, I'm going to kind of scroll up slowly, we attached this document here in the custom fields. This document has presented itself here as well. Now the great part of this is that this will serve the purpose for the supporting document. Remember, there was a setting that we went over when we actually set up their bid package. Again, I'm back on the eBuilder bidding module side of things, right? From the bid manager perspective, I'm going to edit this first page that we reviewed. And what I am specifically referring to is this setting right here called supporting documentation required. So this checkbox represents that something has to be attached by the bidder as supporting documentation. As you can see, there is supporting documentation attached here. Now, if I do want to attach additional documents as supporting documentation, by clicking attach documents here as the bidder, I can drag and drop, or I can click the proverbial browse. Now that we have our numbers and we've answered our question, let me just put my numbers again because it kind of deleted things when I went from one screen to another. I didn't save what I did, which again is a good lesson to learn here. I'm just going to pop in my numbers. Okay. Once all of this is in, we can now click Submit Bid. Okay, now when you submit your bid, something interesting is going to happen because it's basically adding to the security of the experience from both the owner's perspective and the bidder's perspective. So let me click Submit Bid here. Oh, it looks like I'm missing data. Oh, so look what it did. It basically told me, Martin, when you tried to submit your bid, you did not acknowledge all the addendas that are attached to this bid. There it is. So I'm going to go ahead and click this checkbox. And again, the reason that it kind of disappeared on me, because I know I checked it before in the video, is because I kind of went from one page to another. I didn't save what I did, so I kind of blanked everything out. But I was glad that I did that because it actually showed you how that setting works for the bid package. In other words, if I did not acknowledge this, it wouldn't have let me submit the bid. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to click Submit Bid. Okay, once I click Submit Bid, it's going to take me to this screen here where I have to confirm my bid. Now, this is one of the most important screens in the whole bidding module. I'm going to read you word for word what it says. You are about to submit a bid. Once you click on Submit Bid button below, you cannot undo this action. Here's the summary of the bid amounts you entered, bid summary, and the amounts. If a new addendum is added to the bid scope, you will be able to resubmit the bid. Please enter your eBuilder password to confirm your submission. So, the fact that I have to type out my eBuilder password as a bidder is probably one of the most important components of this step. And the reason why is because no one can say, I accidentally hit the button, or I didn't mean to submit this bid. Listen, if you typed out an entire password when you submitted your bid, you kind of meant to do it. Okay, so I just want to make sure that as a person looking at this from the owner's perspective, that you are secure in the fact that when someone does submit a bid and they have to go through the motions of putting in a password, that from the owner's side, you're safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in this person's password, the person who submitted the bid, and I'm going to go ahead and click Submit Bid. Now, once the bid is submitted, a couple of things will be available to you, and it's actually stated there in that previous message. So the number one thing is that it will actually indicate that you did submit the bid on the date and time that you did it. So the date and time stamp is great. Now, what that message before said is if another addenda is added to this bid package, what will happen is that all the bidders will get notified and the person will be allowed to re-invite you as a bidder, meaning they will give you another shot at the bid. So a bidder will have the opportunity to create a new number in the event that an addenda is created prior to the bid due date, but within the bid period after they've submitted their bid. So if we have an overachiever out there and they've submitted their bid, let's say a day or 2 days prior to the due date, and the addenda comes out the day before the due date, those people will have the ability to resubmit their bid accordingly. And obviously the owner will take into consideration how big the change is to the bid package and determine the time that it's going to take the bidder to resubmit their bid. They're not going to say they're going to have 4 hours to resubmit their bid, right? Depending on how big the change is. So again, I just want to make sure I point that out because that's typically the question I get asked when people are training on this and on what the bidder is going to experience. So with this, I am done looking at this from the perspective of the bidder in eBuilder. What we're going to do in the next video is we're now going to take what the bidder has submitted into the system. We're going to kind of review all the numbers and understand what it is to open a bid. And with that, thank you so much for watching.
If you'd like to learn more about additional training opportunities, please contact your account manager.